very good morning and welcome to yet another exciting edition of your favorite Sunday morning show, Media Monitor. I'm your host, Alicia Jali. In our lineup today, we will be looking at the DA's Manifesto launch that took place yesterday, the funeral of the ANC bus crash victims. We scrutinise the arms deal report that has received mixed reactions throughout the week, and we'll also delve into the Rhodes University protest. We'll also talk about Freedom Day as we mark this significant day in our country this coming week. And lastly, the legacy left by music icon Prince. But first, today's news headlines. President Jacob Zuma has arrived in Iran on a visit aimed at expanding economic relations between the two countries. His visit will bolster South Africa's aim to revitalize trade and investment ties with the Islamic Republic. SACP and COSATU leaders have cautioned the ANC against imposing candidates on their supporters ahead of the August local government election, saying it could cost the party at the ballot box. Members of the two organizations marched in Durban. And in your sports news, top-seeded Spaniard Rafael Nadal will face second-seed and defending champion Kei Nishikori of Japan in the final of the Barcelona Open tennis tournament later today. Now, Nadal beat German Philipp Kohlschreiber in their semi-final, while Nishikori raced past Frenchman Ben Wapere. As usual, let's now have a quick browse through your newspaper headlines. That's the Sunday Times, and it's leading with a story about DA allegedly courting Vavi. The City Press headline is about alleged misuse of taxpayers' money by Parliament involving a trip to London. That's the Sunday Independent then. It's leading with a story about the ANC's internal squabbles. That's the Weekend Argus, and it's leading with a story about a rape and murder culprit apologizing to parents of a 16-year-old victim. Last but not least is the Sunday Tribune, and it's leading with a story about the Malaysian plane debris that was found on the South African waters and Kings Park Stadium demise. All right, with me this morning are political analyst Professor Sipho Seepe as well as Professor Kwandile Kondlo. Gentlemen, a very good morning to both of you. Bringing out the big guns once again, I have two professors. Welcome to Media Monitor.
Good morning.
Thank you, Alicia.
Good morning, Prof. Now, our story of the day is, of course, the front page, very interesting, of the Sunday Times. If you have a look there, gentlemen, it says DA courts Vavi, a very catching headline. And according to the front page here, it says Vavi met with DA leader Mmusi Maimane at a Joburg hotel on the 1st of February to discuss forming a coalition government in the highly contested Nelson Mandela Bay. And of course, it further alleges that in this meeting was, of course, former Nelson Mandela Bay Metro Mayoru Uzanokolo Waile, as well as Irvin Jim, who was invited, but of course he didn't pitch. It further alleges that the DA is even prepared to offer Vavi the post of deputy mayor if his United Front wins sizable metros in the upcoming elections. Professor, let's start with you. Your views on the story, specifically after yesterday's manifesto launch.
Well, number one, we should accept that there are no permanent enemies or friends in politics. And despite what Vavi may have stood for and may have said about the DA, but there are times when there is also a commonality of and convergence of interest. And if the interest is to undermine a ruling party that they think is not serving the people well, you'll find that. You also see it in Parliament, where the EFF sometimes agrees with the ANC, sometimes it agrees with the DA, depending on what is tactical at that point in time. So we should not be surprised about that. Mm-hmm. So that's number one. Secondly, there are people who on the left might argue that the Vavi is simply suggesting that it's up for sale. But as I say, there's always a counter argument against that. But what we can also accept is that we are a country of diverse people and who have different ideological positioning. But when people begin to discuss, then they might actually discover that they have more in common than they have, we tend to emphasize the differences. I mean, we talk about the a country that has been able to move forward. Part of it is because there was negotiations and there were certain minimums that people could agree on. But as I say, it's not going to be good for Vavi, especially from the people on the left to say, Chief, you have claimed to be this socialist, this communist and all that, then you have condemned the SACP for abandoning that path. Now you seem to be joining the liberals. But as we say in politics, it's really about putting your country first and simply saying which vehicle can best address those issues.
Prof?
Absolutely. Just to echo the point made by Professor Seepe, in politics, really, there is no permanent enemies. The political space is a very dynamic space, and at a certain point you find what some people call the reconfiguration of the landscape itself. I agree with Professor Seepe fully, and I want to underline the fact that when you talk about Zwelinzima Vavi, it's also important not to talk about him just as an individual. There are actually socio-political and economic forces that he is a product of, and he also champions. And I think his meeting with the DA really, I would say it was probably one of those political meetings just to engage one another and to sense what is possible, because they are faced with a difficult challenge. The difficulty is to unseat the ANC in the Nelson Mandela Metro. Because by all indications, looking at the surveys that have come, the ANC is still going to win that particular metro, even if it wins as quite a slender majority. The fact that they couldn't fill the stadium, I don't think we must read too much into that. You see, when the voting comes, I know and we know, when we look back into the history of elections, local government, national and provincial governments, people actually vote not only looking at manifestos, but also through their hearts and historical loyalties. And I don't think the ANC really, whatever damage has occurred, could actually mean that the ANC loses completely that particular municipality.
Prof, what do you think about him being offered the deputy mayor position?
Well, I mean, look, politics is about art of the possible. And but what we must also do, I mean, we must not sort of imprison people into the past. The constitution that we have was debated among two organizations that were not liberal, the National Party as well as the NP. But what came was something that came largely from interventions by Tony Leon. But the two began to say these are commonalities that we can agree on. But ultimately, the issue for most parties, and when you listen to them, is really to say you have a corrupt party. How do we begin to make sure that we unseat it? But it's also about power. And the politicians are also interested in power. But ultimately, we must say, let's allow the dynamism of humanity to shape the future, because the future is always under construction. And how it pans itself out, we may not be able to predict.
All right, we're going to leave it there on our pick of the day. We're going to take a quick ad break, and when we return, we'll take a look at yesterday's DA Manifesto launch. Do stay with us.
Commission found that the evidence presented before it does not suggest that undue or improper influence played any role in the selection of the preferred bidders, which ultimately entered into contracts with the government. 6, on whether any contract concluded through the procurement process is tainted by any fraud or corruption, the Commission states that the widespread allegations of bribery, corruption, and fraud in the arms procurement process, especially in relation to the selection of the preferred bidders and costs, have found no support or collaboration in the evidence, oral or documentary, placed before the Commission.
Welcome back to Media Monitor. I'm with Professors Sipho Seepe and Professor Kwandile Kondlo, and we are recapping topical stories of the week. Now, the DA launched its 2016 local government election manifesto yesterday out at the Rand Stadium here in Johannesburg. Topping the manifesto were promises of better service delivery, job creation, winning metropolitans, as well as fighting corruption, among other things. Let's take a look at this insert.
If you elect the DA to your municipality, we will work hard to place housing developments close to education, close to workplaces, close to recreation facilities, and close to transport. And so the DA will work hard to speed up the delivery of title deeds in your municipalities. We say it must be title deeds for all. Because under apartheid, South Africans could not own their home. We are saying the best way for us to redress the legacy of apartheid is to give South Africans home ownership. Fellow South Africans, if you elect the DA to govern your municipality, we will work hard to speed up the rollout of basic services. Because basic services, the provision of water, the provision of sanitation and electricity, is the cold face of local government. It's the most important fundamental job a municipality can do. And nothing gives a clearer indication of a government's commitment than the way it rolls out the crucial services to us, the people.
Yes, gentlemen, I really want to hear your views about yesterday's manifesto launch. Let's start with you, Prof.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Well, I think the manifesto has been quite well articulated, as you see, by Musi Maimane, quite passionate about it. But my worry is that, look, it's not really significantly different from the issues they raised in the 2011 local government elections. It's not very significantly different. And of course, it's not a question of being different from the previous manifesto. But of course, the issue is you also find a lot of commonalities in their manifesto with the manifesto of the ruling party, the ANC. And if you look at the DA in the Western Cape, the marginalization of black people at local government level, it's still a big concern. It concerns us and it concerns many people in the country. Yes, the DA is quite, in terms of the management of local government, very good. They would get clean audits, but the impact on historically marginalized groups, their interventions need to be improved in that. But from the manifesto they've launched, you can't really clearly see where they are going to do things differently and more robustly than before, than it was previously.
You know, speaking of that, I was reading Mail and Guardian the other day, and it was reporting that the party policies were still from that on their website, were still pre the 2014 local government elections when Helen Zille was still the leader. Prof?
Well, part of it is because they've reached an intellectual ceiling. Mm-hmm. They cannot conceptualize a different future than that has been articulated by the ANC and that you find in the NDP. But most importantly, when I listened to Maimane, he was able to capture places where there are protests against the ANC. And I was hoping that as he mentions places where there's failure, there'll be mention of Khayelitsha, there'll be mention of Gugulethu, there'll be mention of Nyanga. And that he shied away from, because the experience of people there is very different from the rosy picture that he presents. So if the DA has to win the hearts of black people, it must be honest, because people are saying, how are you treating black people wherever you govern? Because we can talk about the clean audits at the city of Cape Town, but even when you talk about the best cities that are run, you must actually look at to what extent are those part of the legacy of benefit, historical benefit by white people. It's almost like taking a poor black university that was disadvantaged and you compare it with a white university that was heavily resourced and say, look at this university. So there's an element of dishonesty. I would have loved if he mentions Zanspray, he mentions all those things. He says, well, in Khayelitsha, this is what we do. Because ultimately, if you're trying to woo black people, talk also about their interest. And of course, yes, in terms of manifestos, you'll always find that there'll be convergence because the issues that affect people are the same. For instance, the issue of service delivery, and the ANC will talk about service delivery. The EFF will also talk about the service delivery. They'll talk about jobs. But if you talk to black professionals, they will tell you that we qualify, but we are not able to get jobs. And who are the people who are in control of those? Most of the people will be probably people who are with us for the ANC, of the DA. So you must talk that language to say what difference you're going to make, especially for the people you are trying to woo. But at the level of eloquence, you have to give it to Maimane. I think short of, Julius Malema is really one of the best orators we have in this country. But with Maimane, what you get is somebody who can read the speech quite well. But I don't get the element of authenticity. This is why when he tries to speak, the first thing that he does is to locate himself within Soweto, more almost like to reclaim the notion of black authenticity. It's not really necessary. All you have to do is to say, we as a DA are going to do it differently, and this, but in terms of the issues are the same.
Let's talk about racism. I mean, a lot of people, we've seen a lot of allegations of even party members, being implicated in issues of racism. Do you think that was properly addressed in the manifesto, Prof?
I don't think I actually heard Maimane coming across emphatically on the issue of transformation and also dealing with racism. Of course, there is a pledge which he made publicly on the DA's commitment to non-racialism, which I think was quite excellent and very good. But in the manifesto, I don't think he dealt with issues of transformation as emphatically and as elaborately as some of us would have expected him to, because he leads a party which many people still view it as historically white. Yeah.
Prof, did you think it was addressed?
Yeah, I think it's a very important thing, especially even his own ascendancy in politics. It was so fast-tracked. It was, if you're talking about the real affirmative action in the DA, Wisman is an embodiment of that. And you also know that the notion of renting a black was always there. They tried to rent Mampela Rampela, it flopped. So they had to go and get another black after they have dismissed another black person. So you need to respond to those issues of racism. And as Prof says here, if you let that pledge, it is a wonderful pledge. It would have been a pledge that it could have come from the ANC to deal with the issue of the schedules of racism. But when you know that your party has this history, and when your people have been accused in the last 2 months of making some of these statements, when you have a former premier saying to black people that they are refugees in the country of their birth, you need to be able to say, we are now closing that chapter, we're starting a new one. And here, transformation and racism was not on the cards.
All right, with that, let's have a quick look now at what you at home are saying in regards to this topic. Victor Ndlovu says, DA stands no chance of winning those metros. Food parcels do not work there like in Gugulethu. And Bigit Teaser says, I like the fact that he spoke from the heart and had contact with people, not remote controlled. Last but not least there, Romeo Ndlovu says, nothing new and attacking the ANC. All right, that's where we're going to leave it with your tweets on. All right, there's one more tweet there. All right, we're going to take it. All right, we're not going to take it now. We're going to take a quick ad break. And remember, we're going to take a very quick ad break. We're going to come back with more Media Monitor.
All the applications made by all the accused as against conviction and sentence are dismissed. The submissions in relation to the applications for leave to appeal against conviction and sentence of all the accused covered the same grounds which had been covered during the course of the hearing and which had been submitted to me previously prior to me making the judgments which I did.
The big news is Newsroom.
We also stream live on YouTube.
Whether you're at home, at the office, or at the gym, wherever you are, Newsroom is right there with you. Bringing you all the latest news, updates, sports, weather, and everything in between. Get all the latest news you need on the go via live streaming on our YouTube channel. That's Newsroom, weekdays at 9 a.m. only on the SABC News Channel.
Welcome back to Media Monitor. Now on Wednesday, the country will be celebrating Freedom Day under the theme Together Building Better Communities. Local government is everybody's business. This day, among other things, celebrates our hard-earned freedom and our first non-racial freedom. And, of course, non-racial elections. Professors, this day, I mean, we're always talking every year about the significance of this day. Do people still preserve the meaning?
Yeah, I think it's very significant, especially given our history. And it's something that we must continue to remind people about how apartheid was. And because also, especially when you have people who are saying things are better now than they were under apartheid, it's because they have no clue what it meant to be black under apartheid. And secondly, we must also, what you hear young people are saying, they're beginning to problematize even the concepts like a rainbow nation, because there are some people who want to say South Africa was best in 1994 because you had this, and they want to pretend that there were no legacies, there were no challenges that needed to be addressed. So what young people are saying is that let's problematize even the concept of a rainbow nation, because if you go back to people like Joe Slovo, he was very clear that we must consider every phase as a terrain of struggle to get the things that you would not have gotten on the negotiating table. So he was anticipating a prolonged struggle for redress. But what happened is that we bought into the myth of rainbowism, we bought into the miracle nation, and then we became complacent. And little did we know that the challenges that we face are much major. So as people celebrate the Freedom Day, it's also an opportunity for education to understand what Mandela said when he says we had unrealistic expectations. We did not know that we are inheriting a bankrupt state. That will make it very difficult. And of course, there were also other challenges that were ideological, that in as much as the ANC may have thought this will be easy, it had little anticipation of the forces that are anti-transformation forces that were there internationally and also locally. So we need to celebrate it, because those of us who know what it is to be oppressed, to be almost told that you're not good enough. And as the young people tell you today, that they are also told on a daily basis that I graduate, but I graduate to unemployment because I'm black. Those are the realities that we must say. But what it says, as the new language is about economic freedom, we must make sure that there's a translation of this political freedom to say, how do we use it as a space for launching the next struggle?
Prof, what do you think?
Alicia, I think we should really utilize the Freedom Day and really get the speeches that are delivered focused, and I think there should be a sincere meaning that gets conveyed, especially for the sake of our young people. The first thing that needs to be underlined, I think, during Freedom Days is that we negotiated political accommodation. In other words, an inclusive political democracy. And the rhetoric of revolution sometimes scuttles this whole trajectory, you see. And this we need to get our young people to understand, is that, look, South Africa is a negotiated democracy. It's a young democracy. So we've got to keep that in mind. It doesn't matter how radical the demands from certain quarters are, but we must understand the framework within which we operate.
Look.
And secondly, we need to emphasize the importance of leadership and development.
Look, professors, let's talk about the theme, though. I find it very interesting. Together, building better communities. Local government is everybody's business.
Yeah, it is everybody's business, and it's at the local government that the policies of national government, of provincial government, of local government, that's why they're felt. Because when people protest, if there's a problem with health, even if it may be a national competency, the people go to a local councillor, somebody they can reach out to. So, but at the same time, we should also be saying, when we say the people shall govern, we must be talking about the people that are reachable, that are within your space. And here, I think the ANC has done something, a shift, to say we're going to do it differently. We're no longer going to impose people on yourself. You guys must select people that you trust. You see, in the past, the people were presented as tried and tested and all that, but they overlooking the competencies and the skills that people know. For instance, if somebody was a doctor who was caring, if that person wants to serve the community, the ANC says, allow those people. And so it's very important. Even the issues that the DA raises about effective government, delivery and all, those are very important issues. But here what is different is the power is in your hand. And that, for me, is a powerful message.
All right, let's leave it there, because meanwhile the victims of the ANC bus crash were laid to rest yesterday. Speaking at the funeral of the Ekurhuleni members that died while returning from the ANC Manifesto launch last week, President Jacob Zuma pleaded with motorists to exercise caution on the roads at all times while he was paying tribute to the victims there. What did you make of that funeral, Prof?
I think it was very sad, actually. Very sad. I watched the funeral carefully. But I think, number one, there was a message which was conveyed to the nation and to the families by Gwede Mandashe that I thought was very strong, and it was quite a healing message. And one also hopes that the ANC will find strength out of what has happened to build more unity and to be more caring to its members.
All right. Well, before we go any further, let's listen to what the President said on this package.
Comrades, we now dedicate our local government campaign to the memory of the Ekurhuleni 10. Through our hard work, we will pay a victorious elections tribute to them.
9 were buried at the Thomas Nkobi Memorial Site on Gauteng's East Rand yesterday, and the other victims will be laid to rest in KwaZulu-Natal today. May their souls rest in peace. We're going to take a quick ad break. More analysis of the stories that made headlines this week, including the controversial arms deal report shortly after this break.
We are here with the Minister to show successes since 1994, and we thought Cosmos City is a good model for what we are doing, building new cities, because that's the approach we are taking now. So here you've got bond houses, rental houses, the normal giveaway houses that we used to call RDP houses. So it's in a sense a place now where everybody lives.
What we have witnessed today is the outcome of a dream we embarked upon many years ago, which we solidified about 10 years ago. A dream to fashion a different future together. A future that will remarkably change the ugly past that separated our people on the basis of class, color, religion, and ethnic background.
Welcome back. We're still taking your views at SA Media Monitor. President Jacob Zuma released the much-awaited report on the Seriti Commission of Inquiry into the arms deal, which found no evidence of corruption against any person or institution. President Zuma, delivering the report, said this.
The Commission states that the widespread allegations of bribery, corruption and fraud in the arms procurement process, especially in relation to the selection of the preferred bidders and costs, have found no support or collaboration in the evidence, oral or documentary, placed before the Commission.
Right, before we get into further details of that particular report, our SABC senior reporter Njanji Chauke compiled this report for us, looking at the history of the arms deal probe.
The arms deal, conceived as early as 1995, it was signed and sealed in 1999. After the dawn of a new democracy, government undertook a process to replace the country's aging military hardware. Authorities saw the need to acquire new warships, fighter jets, helicopters and submarines. But it's a deal that was shrouded in controversy amid allegations of impropriety, corruption and bribery. Projected to cost 29 billion rand when it was first signed, the figure has since risen to over 70 billion rand due to inflation and other charges. And when tenders were awarded, more allegations of corruption emerged. Patricia de Lille, a PAC MP at the time, among those who cried foul. She handed in a dossier containing allegations of corruption in the negotiation of contracts and calling for an inquiry. And over the years, it's an acquisition that's seen probes by a number of bodies, including the Scorpions, the Heath Investigative Unit and the Hawks, but little emerged. But in 2011, there was a twist. Terry Crawford Brown took the president to the highest court in the land. A legal challenge that saw the Siriti Commission established. It saw 4 years of public hearings and testimony from 54 witnesses, including former President Thabo Mbeki and ex-cabinet ministers.
Commissioners, the views of government with regard to threats and all of that are reflected both in the white paper and the defense review. As a person, I don't have any views that are different from those.
With the release of the final report clearing all implicated parties, 3 of the critics who boycotted the hearings say the findings were not unexpected.
Total waste of taxpayers' money. It was a predetermined outcome even before the commission started. The only thing that Judge Siriti had to do was to design a process that can produce the outcome.
It's clear that the Arms Procurement Commission did not admit certain crucial documents and never investigated the allegations in those documents.
I was not surprised when I listened to the President this morning, but sadly, the importance of the arms deal is that it has unleashed the culture of corruption that we face.
South Africans also weighed in on the report.
I was disappointed at the outcome. The reason is that even the process, we found that the members of the commission pulled out.
It was in the public favor. As a nation, we also need weapons.
With no findings of wrongdoing and no recommendations at all, it now means the arms probe is now a closed chapter. Janji Chauke, SABC News, Johannesburg.
All right, and we're very pleased to be joined on this discussion by attorney Mr. Paul Ngubeni from our Cape Town studios. Mr. Ngubeni, a very good morning to you, sir. Thank you so much for joining us here on Media Monitor.
Good morning, and thank you for inviting me.
Mr. Ngubeni, we just want to hear, before we go any further, your views and opinion of what you made of this report.
Well, first of all, I think the report accomplished what the president sought to accomplish, and it also accomplished in terms of the mandate that the commission had, which was not to replace the Hawks, not to replace other law enforcement agencies, but it was to investigate the questions as put to it by the president. And the commission, not surprisingly, the commission found that there was no evidence of wrongdoing. This, by the way, is not the first time an investigation has come to the same conclusions. People tend to forget that in 2001, you had the public protector and the auditor general, both Chapter 9 institutions, coming to exactly the same conclusions. So it's not surprising. So the critics who are ideologically driven need to have a good perspective and also have take a look at history.
Gentlemen, what did you make of this finding?
Yeah, I'm glad that you played the clip of former president, because his appearance before the commission was very interesting. He actually said to the people who accuse his government, to say, you've been beating the drums for the last 16 years. Show me the evidence of corruption. And immediately when he demanded evidence, the people who were loudest could not actually present that evidence. And well, it could be argued, as some people said, that there was a crucial evidence that was not presented. But if people have proof of corruption, and we're not saying there isn't, we do not know, but if people have that, they can go to the nearest law enforcement agencies and open cases. But what the former president was saying is that you have made and you have locked the nation into this narrative But the real proof will be when you show me where I've actually done that. Instead, actually, one of the accusers ended up actually crying because the former president was able to respond to him that, Chief, I've heard those allegations. Even Patricia de Lille, when she went there, because I also watched that, she was repeating what were in the newspapers. And the presiding judge said, look, don't tell us about what you've heard, we want evidence. She was not able to produce evidence. So, in as much as some of us had written about it, raising concerns about the arms deal, we adopted and embraced a narrative of the time. But ultimately, what we must accept is that we need people with credible evidence to stand up there. And what was unfortunate that the very same people who were loudmouths and the loudest critics, suddenly, and those who have also built their careers around this, they've written books, suddenly they chose not to participate. So the outcome is not surprising. If people with credible evidence choose not to come, the commission can only use and come to a finding based on the evidence before them. And when one says that, one does not say there is no corruption. I don't know as I speak, but what some of us had raised is whether the money could have been better spent. But that's a different question altogether. The question is, was there corruption? And it may be that we were sitting ducks and we end up buying things we do not need. But that was not what the commission was looking at.
Prof?
Yes, I still feel that the critics or people who raised issues, well, I wouldn't say they were ideologically driven. I would say, I think their reactions were based on perceptions rather than facts. And the commission needed facts. And it's not surprising that in the end it arrives at these kinds of conclusions. But at the same time, you must remember that people have raised questions about the number of resignations during the process of the commission. Some people saying very effective researchers actually resigned during the process of the commission because of the internal dynamics, the internal workings of the commission, which, well, some of us don't know much about them. Well, there will always be questions about the results of the commission, and let's see what happens next.
Mr. Ngubeni, let's come back to you. So, I mean, there was a serious dissatisfaction, as the professors have also mentioned here in studio, from opposition parties, citing, I mean, the most crucial evidence was not heard, yet we saw the witnesses that were called in, including former President Thabo Mbeki, citing similar reasons for the acquisition of those arms.
Yes, regarding the so-called crucial evidence, I think it's more myth than fact, because people are citing an alleged report by some American law firm that clearly is privileged. You couldn't ask a lawyer about what opinion he gave to his client and what information his client gave him. So in that regard, I believe the commission did consider the matter, but because of the legal privilege applicable there, you can't cite that as evidence. It's not evidence because it's not available. You cannot force the lawyers to testify on it, neither can you force their client. So that's the so-called crucial evidence that is being paraded by the likes of mania of the DA. It's not crucial evidence at all because it's not evidence, it's legally privileged. And with regard to what the professor said, I agree with both of them, but look at what de Lille did. He had the so-called de Lille dossier that everyone has been claiming is this smoking gun evidence. When the time came for her to testify about that, she could do no better than produce anecdotal evidence and rank hearsay, which the commission properly threw out. So without the de Lille dossier and without the legally privileged document that everyone is waving all over the place, there is no evidence, there's no credible evidence. And Judge Siriti was correct in reaching the conclusion that based on applicable legal principles, he could not just out of thin air conclude that there was corruption when the persons who claimed they had evidence failed to come forward with that evidence.
Mr. Ngubeni, while we're still on that matter, I mean, I need your legal expertise here. So I know that the whistleblower, Mr. Terry Crawford, said that he would go as far as international court in order to try and prove his story. But what do you think are other available, avenues, possible avenues that this can be taken further? Is it possible to take this matter further, or it's done and dusted now?
It's done and dusted now. The matter is at an end. You cannot review the Commission's findings. The Commission's findings are not binding, by the way. They're not legally binding on anyone. The President could have rejected the findings if he so chose. With regard to Mr. Brown's approaching international tribunals and so forth, as I said, some people are ideologically driven. So he's within his rights, constitutional right to do so. But as far as this case is concerned, it's over.
Thank you so much to Mr. Paul Ngubeni there, and he was joining us from our Cape Town Seapoint studios. Let's take a few tweets and see what you're saying about the matter here on Media Monitor. The useless commission is covering all arms deal criminals. Everybody knows the truth. The commission was a waste of money. And Popcorn Clothing says we cannot pick and choose which judiciary results we like. The next day, the same opposition tell us to respect. All right, Noluzi Pagamani says, my take is the Commission and the courts function differently, extremely so. Consider Shabir and then the arms deal report. Very quickly, Professor, I mean, I asked this question late last year when we were talking about commissions and their relevance and if they really still do their jobs, and then you get an outcome that people are not accepting. Very quickly.
Well, there is a number of purposes. One is to ventilate concerns that the society may have, but also they may assist in ultimately leading to a conviction or a charging of certain people. But on this matter, as some of us have said, that if there is evidence, we have law enforcement agencies and we have parties that at the slightest provocation go to the courts. So those, I've not seen any of them approaching the court to say, here's evidence. And this was the former president, Thabo Mbeki, challenged them. He says, you've held this view for 16 years. Now I'm here, accuse me, show me the evidence, and they failed.
All right, well, that's where we leave it on that matter. We're going to take a very quick ad break. More Media Monitor shortly after this.
Whilst Cabinet appreciates the terms and conditions of the banks, the acts may deter future potential investors who may want to do business in South Africa. Cabinet endorsed that the Ministers of Finance, Labour and Mineral Resources should open a constructive engagement with the banks to find a lasting solution to this matter.
Welcome back to Media Monitor. You can still share your views on our topics today through our social media platforms. In some news now today, the SABC COO Hlaudi Motsoeneng has announced major changes at the corporation. Among them, several language-based television channels to serve the SABC's audiences in the language of their choice. Motsoeneng says the new channels will also enhance the broadcaster's capacity to cater for people with disabilities. A newly established in-house production facility will produce some of the new content in various languages to depict South Africa's rich cultural diversity. The broadcaster has also announced that it will advertise vacancies and tender advertisements on its television, radio as well as digital platforms only. Now, this decision will be implemented with immediate effect. Let's take a look at this clip.
We have put aside 600 million rand for productions that are going to be local content. What we are now going to do, because now we are going to have channels for each and every languages, the Chief Operations Officer of the SABC, Ntate Motsoeneng, will lead a team to go to all the provinces to make sure that he encourages the production houses that are in the provinces to produce content that will expose the provinces, but also at the same time expose the culture and languages, because we want these programs to be in a position where they can expose the cultures and become the cultural melting pot of the society. As the SABC, we are mandated to do that. As of now, we have decided that all the adverts that are for our vacancies at the SABC and those that are for tenders that we issue at the SABC will only be put or advertised on our platform, which is television, radio, and digital platforms of the SABC. And the third major development that we are announcing today is the fact that we are no more going forward going to be using the marketing agencies, as we believe that we have got people enough in the organization who are able and to deal with those issues, that marketing issues that the agencies have been dealing with.
Interesting things happening at the corporation. I see you taking notes, Prof. Are you going to apply for something?
No. I think the first thing that is being put here, which is consistent with a lot of noise in our political space, is that of the in-house capacity.
Absolutely.
Yes. Companies spend a lot of money outsourcing, and when they may have that capacity. So you hear that at university, you hear elsewhere, that if you really want to deliver, you cannot outsource that responsibility to people, especially when you have that capacity. The second one is what I call cultural reclamation. I always feel, almost like we're at disservice that at times it is the African who has to learn other people's languages. Sometimes you hear a woman who has lost a husband or a child now having to say that in English when they can actually say it in their own language. So when you do this, you are actually saying your language matter, and that they are not a mistake of God, that we will make sure that this notion of languages being sacrosanct and being respected is very important. Because as we speak today, it is largely black people who have a responsibility to learn other languages. Other people do not see that responsibility. It's almost a one-way. So this move is simply to say sometimes concepts are better understood when people feel closely and they do not need an interpreter. So for me, it is also consistent with what the Constitution expected, that when you say the people shall be made to feel human, the restoration of human dignity starts with also cultural reclamation.
A quick one, Prof.
Yeah, very interesting developments, and congratulations to the SABC. But my question is, why only now? This should have been done long time ago. What was the CEO waiting for?
All right.
I still can't answer that.
Yeah.
All right, well, that's where we leave it on those interesting developments. Now, female Rhodes University students took to the campus this week, half naked, protesting against the rape incidents at the institution. The protest saw some students being arrested, and they accused management of failure to deal with sexual abuse at the university. Professors.
Well, this is one of those things that we've seen about management at our universities, whether they deal with the fees. You'll find that they are always caught off guard, underprepared. And what I find most amazing is that if you're talking about the loudest critics of government, it is people coming from universities. And the question is, what part of this did management not see? And it's always important that management is also in tune with the concerns of the students, because they're there for the students. That's your main client, and you're failing that main client. And the mere fact that they are protest, what it means, the students are saying, you're not listening to us, you're not hearing us. So for me, it is a matter that is a societal, but the university should anticipate that these issues, societal as they may find expression in our campuses, but the management must anticipate and must lead. And here, it's a fail of management.
Let's listen to what the students were saying on this package.
What I want is a change in how they handle the whole situation. Basically, it should be one of the top priorities for all students because it's our safety at hand that's being risked, and I feel like that's what should happen.
I want management to listen to us. I want management to hear our pain. I want management to acknowledge our pain. The pain of students who have to see their rapists every day. The pain of students who don't feel comfortable reporting their assaults to management. And I want them to change the sexual assault policy at the moment, because at the moment it's failing the survivors.
Right. Well, professors, thank you so much for joining us. Unfortunately, we've run out of time today, and that's where we leave it with our show. Thank you so much for watching our show, Media Monitor. We hope that you will join us again next week, same time and same place. Remember, we are available on social and digital media platforms, and if you missed the show, we're available on YouTube. Shortly after this broadcast, I'm Alicia Jali. I'm back on top of the hour with AM News. Bye for now.
Fans held candlelight vigils after the news of Prince's death quickly spread. There was also an impromptu street party in New York. Residents of his hometown, Minnesota, brought flowers and photographs to his secluded compound.
He is an icon in the community. I mean, Paisley Park, living in Chanhassen, he is an icon. I mean, we kind of grew up with this music.